A new whistleblower complaint from Department of Homeland Security employee Brian Murphy was released on Wednesday, and it provided some rather disturbing allegations of criminal behavior and abuse of authority within the Trump administration, specifically at DHS. Now, look, I know nobody's going to be shocked here that this administration is full of abuse of authority and criminal behavior. It's basically the tagline for this administration is we're all fucking criminals here. But nonetheless, there's some pretty big allegations in this. So why don't we just dive right into it? So now, for one of the allegations is that from Murphy is he said that he was illegally directed to manipulate intelligence assessments in order to support the administration's border agenda. So now, around October 29th of 2018, Murphy was given instruction by other administration officials to ensure that the intelligence assessments he produced for Secretary of State Kirstjen Nielsen supported the policy argument that a large number of people were entering the United States through the southwest border and that these people were dangerous. So now, Murphy declined to censor and manipulate the intelligence information, saying that it was an improper administration of an intelligence program, and stated that to his superior that doing so would be illegal and that he would not do it. So he reported this, and he said, "Look, I'm not going to do it. Simple as that. I'm not just going to alter intelligence reports so that Donald Trump can justify building a border wall. That's not going to happen." So credit where credit is due, right? So now, it wasn't just, again, Kirstjen Nielsen, but the next part deals with her as well. The complaint also says that DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen repeatedly and deliberately had lied to Congress to exaggerate the threat at the border, despite the fact that she did not have the altered intelligence reports to make that claim. Again, she wanted those reports so that she can go to Congress and say, look how dangerous this is. You should approve Donald Trump's border wall, which would, of course, help Donald Trump with his base. And, of course, it's something that Donald Trump wanted. Now, Murphy said that the secretary purposely tried to blur the distinction between known and suspected terrorists and other categories of migrants, basically trying to paint everyone who crosses the border illegally as a known or suspected terrorist to try to make the case that we need that border wall. Now, it misleadingly suggested that the border posed a greater threat of terrorism than it actually does. And again, we hear that, of course, all over Fox News every time they bring up the migrant caravan or anything like that or immigration to the wall. They always say, well, look at the terrorists. They're coming over from Mexico. Or at least they were before COVID-19, according to Fox. In reality, they never did. They were not coming over the border. In reality, if there were any terrorists, they were homegrown and right-wing extremists. And, of course, there's a section on that as well. We'll get to that later. Now, even after Murphy explained the distinctions to Kirstjen Nielsen, she consistently misled Congress about the matter during a congressional hearing back in 2018. Again, the reason, of course, is the facts don't matter. They wanted to push a narrative, and that narrative, of course, started with Donald Trump, and everyone, was given their orders. Try to fit the facts to meet the narrative. Okay, and of course that brings up Ken Cuccinelli, acting deputy secretary of Homeland Security Ken Cuccinelli had allegedly tried to distort intelligence reports he viewed as too favorable to those seeking asylum, claiming that they were concocted by the quote deep state. Now, in December 2019, Mr. Murphy attended a meeting with Cuccinelli, as well as some others, to discuss intelligence reports regarding conditions in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Cuccinelli expressed frustration with the intelligence reports that Murphy produced, and he accused unknown, quote, deep state intelligence analysts of compiling the intelligence information to undermine President Donald Trump's policy objectives with respect to asylum. Now, you guys remember, Donald Trump's policy agenda is to shut out all asylum seekers, to completely shut down the border, 100%, and build a wall. Unless, of course, you come from a very wealthy nation. But if you come from, what is Donald Trump had referred to as quote-unquote shithole country, then obviously he doesn't want you here because you are a loser and you're a terrible person and you're a criminal, rapist, whatever he's said. And he has said a lot of things against migrants, people who are basically trying to, flee war and poverty and disaster in order to try to build a better life for themselves. He didn't like that. He don't like that at all. Notwithstanding, Mr. Murphy's response to that is that the intelligence report's assessments were consistent with past assessments made for several years. Cuccinelli then ordered his superior, as well as Murphy, to identify the names of the deep state individuals who compiled intelligence reports and to either fire or reassign them completely. Oh, the intelligence reports don't fit my narrative and the narrative from my boss, Donald Trump, the guy that I work for? Well, then fire the people making the intelligence, hire people who will literally lie for me in order to fit that narrative. Another issue, by the way, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. The complaints also talked about how Secretary of State Chad Wolf had told Murphy to stop reporting on potential election interference from Russia and instead to focus on China and Iran. So, okay, that would appear to also be in Donald Trump's favor, as again, Donald Trump wants to focus on China and Iran. Now, the complaints also, again, talked about how Murphy was told not to discuss threats from white supremacists. Why? Well, because threats from white supremacists would reflect badly on Donald Trump. In fact, higher-ups then preferred that Murphy's team work on, quote, violent left-wing groups like Antifa. So, don't focus on white supremacists. That makes us look bad. Why would white supremacists make you look bad? Huh. Weird. Like, is it because you have things in common with white supremacists? Perhaps? That your administration is very, very friendly towards white supremacists? Again, why would that make you, going after them make you look bad? To whom? To whom? Very interesting. Very interesting. But that's it, right? They said focus on Antifa. Antifa, who's, by the way, killed far less Americans than white supremacist groups. That the majority of violence, domestic terrorism in this country has been perpetrated by right-wing domestic terrorists. Nonetheless, during multiple meetings between the end of May 2020 and July 31st, 2020, Murphy made protected disclosures to Wolf and Cuccinelli regarding abuse of authority and improper administration of an intelligence program with respect to intelligence information on Antifa and anarchist groups operating throughout the United States. On each occasion, Mr. Murphy was instructed by Mr. Wolf and Mr. Cuccinelli to modify intelligence assessments to ensure they matched up with the public comments by President Trump on the subject of Antifa and anarchist groups. Let's see. Mr. Murphy declined to modify any of the intelligence assessments based on political rhetoric and advised both officials that he would only report accurate information as collected by the DHS and INA. So this is all about political correctness. Donald Trump is like, oh, no. We're not going to talk about white supremacists. No, that makes me look bad. I want to talk about Antifa. I want to talk about quote-unquote anarchist groups. Remember, this is happening during the wake of the George Floyd protests, right, that have been going on for months. And so racial justice is was at the forefront of the American, consciousness, right, and still is. And that was at a time where the George Floyd protests were actually way more popular than they were now. And so Trump said, well, I'm not interested and talking about white supremacy, especially, when it comes to policing. No. Let's talk about Antifa. Let's talk about rioters. Let's talk about anarchists. And by the way, it was pretty effective in bringing down the support for the Black Lives Matter protests in the intervening months, or I should say in the following months. And so it was a pretty effective tactic. They knew exactly what they were doing. And Cuccinelli was part of that. Cuccinelli and Chad Wolf, at least according to this whistleblower. And so, I mean, it is really fascinating here to see these disclosures. Because, again, here you have the government pushing out propaganda. And in order, again, to fit a narrative. And, again, we call that political correctness. And that's what this is. Again, a president who says, I hate political correctness. We don't like this at all. A whole political party that says we hate political correctness, literally doing political correctness. It's amazing, right? And look, they've got Chad Wolf, who's a political hack, and they've got Ken Cuccinelli, who's also a political hack, that is willing to do this stuff and willing to order to people to break the law. And this culture is dictated by the President of the United States, a president who wants total loyalty and will reject anything that runs counter to his narrative because he doesn't care about facts. And he surrounds himself with people who don't care about facts and who are expected to be completely loyal. That is political correctness. You change intel reports to match what the president is saying for political purposes. It is the very definition of political correctness and exactly what the Nazi Party did in Germany back in the 1930s. This is fascism 101. And I know some of you might roll your eyes. Oh my God, here we go. He's talking about fascism again. But in reality, we are dealing with fascism in this country. There are people who have power right now and are willing to use it to do illegal things to lie to the country to fit a political narrative from the President of the United States. That is fascism, and that exactly is who the Republican Party is. And if you don't see it, it's because you don't want to see it or because you cheer it on.